And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and on demand wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks everybody who's hanging out live. Smash the subscribe, smash the like, come and join us in the chat. Another reminder in case you didn't hear us on Saturday night. On Friday, we had a subscriber-only live mailbag. Questions from the chat, our answers, something that is just going to be a special treat for subscribers this season. So make sure that you go and subscribe at youtube.com/cover3 and cut on those notifications. You'll get an alert anytime that we go ahead and plan another live mailbag. We're going to go ahead and spin this thing forward. We do have a pun for the review. Yes, we've got to discuss the finale, the ending of Vanderbilt, Hawaii, which, whoo, thank goodness our doors are 1-0.
Never a doubt.
There were doubts. All right. Anyway, we will discuss that in a little bit. And of course, we're going to go ahead and get you started, whet the appetite a little for Thursday night's big games, including Florida at Utah, Minnesota-Nebraska, and much more. But first, some news, including a team that will be playing on that Thursday night in the final game of the night. It is going to be the Arizona State Sun Devils, and Arizona State is going to be playing against Southern Utah. And less than a week before the start of their season, they find out that Arizona State is self-imposing a bowl ban for this season as a result of the ongoing NCAA case against the school's program. Again, a lot of these violations are from former coach Herm Edwards, and some of the recruiting violations, especially that were going on during the COVID-19, the pandemic rules. So for the Sun Devils, the fallout has been kind of hard to watch and hard to listen to. Reports indicating that the mood of the meeting was, quote, devastating, according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. I don't know if y'all saw the Kenny Dillingham clip, but he has come out and he has just been very upset and hurt for his players. That's what you got to do if you're Kenny Dillingham. Tom, how do you take this decision, and do you find it to be sensible or unfair given the circumstances of the ongoing investigation?
Sensible and unfair.
Okay, both.
First of all, it's big brain because you weren't going bowling this year anyway. So imposing the postseason bans, okay, I mean, I understand for the players, that's still the goal and all that. But I feel bad for the players who are thinking we can go to a bowl game this year. And now they realize that even if they win 7 or 8 games, they can't, or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, they can't go to a bowl game. But while it's unfair to punish the players on this roster, including many people who transferred in over the offseason, for the mistakes of a previous staff, if you don't take this step to kind of try to alleviate any possible penalties coming your way from the NCAA, then you're just punishing the players 2 to 3 years from now. So no matter what you do, players who had absolutely nothing to do with what happened are going to be punished. It is on Arizona State's, leadership. It was on Herm Edwards and his staff. It's on Ray Anderson for all the stuff that they did during the COVID season that you weren't supposed to do that is getting them in trouble right now. But as is always the case with the NCAA, it's players who didn't do anything who get punished for it. So, yeah, it's sensible and it sucks.
I mean, if I'm an Arizona State booster, how does Ray Anderson have a job?
I don't know.
Right? Like that, really? After all the stuff he's done and allowed to happen under his watch. Look, it definitely sucks for the players. It's not on Dillingham and his staff. They just got there. I'm sure the decision was over their head. I don't think they're very likely to make a bowl. The Super Bowl for them was basically always going to be that Arizona game at the end of the year anyway. There's some chance they make a bowl, but it's not exceedingly likely. So
they host Oklahoma State. If they had been able to nab Gundy, who says that we will be playing multiple quarterbacks for, quote, quite some time. If you were able to get that one and then set yourself up, what was their win total? 4.5 or 5?
I think it was 4.5. And you get what, Fresno too, I think?
Yep.
Is that right? I have a lot of these schedules memorized, just not all of them. Fresno, Oklahoma State, Southern Utah. They don't get Stanford, I believe, which is maybe the worst team in the Pac-12. Probably the worst team in the Pac-12. Yeah. But hey, we can have Herm Edwards, just preach to us on ESPN and just not even mention what went down there at Arizona State and just get rehired immediately. It's amazing.
I agree with both you guys. I mean, I think Tom said it best. Like, why not get in front of it, take your lumps while, and it's kind of a screw the players move, but those players are all seniors. They're not going to be there for the long haul. That's just the harsh reality of it. I would be curious to know the timeline because the players just found out, right?
Correct.
Now, were they lied to? Because I'm sure this came up in any educated transfer that came in or somebody that went in there. Hey, what's happening with the investigation? Is there going to be penalties where I'm going to have to pay? If they were misled and they've been sitting on this for a while, then I think it's a much bigger issue, which I think is kind of what you're hearing from some of the players. Then you wonder where their mindset is going into this season. I hate it, though. It's just one of those stories where, again, the NCAA, the two biggest issues I have with it are the amount of time these investigations take. They take forever. And the lack of continuity in the punishments, the lack of consistency in the punishments, because, you can fudge the system and kind of manipulate it to curtail it to your specific situation. You don't have a coach who you could suspend 3 games against a cakewalk schedule. So, because he's gone and he's got a great gig. So you've got to do something that harms the players. All of it just sucks.
Again, I ask a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to ask a question I've asked before. What if you just ignore the NCAA?
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised that.
What if you just do what you want to do anyway?
People ask that all the time, on a tweet or you put something out there. Why don't they? I mean, why not just say, we're going to wait? And then even if they do suspend you, just their power.
What are you going to go to jail because you didn't listen to the NCAA? No, there's nothing they can do.
I think the NCAA certifies bowl games. It is, anyway, trash. I thought that we were over bowl bans, right? Go back to the Tennessee case. And, one of the headlines is Tennessee avoids a bowl ban for these recruiting violations. And we come in this is a good sign that we are not punishing players in the present or future for something that they didn't have anything to do with. This is, I don't know. Would you test it, or do you know that based on the violations that it's so much stacked on top of each other, you were likely headed for a bowl ban anyway? I don't know. It's a tough decision to make. I just thought that we were in a place where we were not going to see cases like this result in bowl bans. But Arizona State doesn't want to take that risk. They want year 2 of Jaden Rashada to be in a situation where they're going to chase a Pac-12 championship game, which they are now ineligible for, where they're going to chase not just a bowl game, but no, there's not going to be a Pac-12 championship game. Daggone, a Big 12 championship game. Now they're going to be in a spot where, coming down the stretch of a season where bowl game was going to be potentially a coin flip proposition, going to be tough. Hate it for them big time.
I'm not going to say it. It's mean. I'm trying to be more positive this year.
No, say it.
I don't really think that most of the guys that they got in the portal had much better options to go to schools that were definitely going to go play for bowls.
That's fine.
Maybe there are certainly they could have dropped down and gone to some good G5s, but I don't think there's a lot of.
It doesn't diminish the point though. If they thought they were going somewhere they could contend, it's kind of messed up if they were given misleading information.
No doubt.
And to everyone's point, how the heck does Ray Anderson have a job still? Is just
no. He's going to take a victory lap for the Big 12 move.
Yeah.
Look at what I was able to do.
Hey, do you see who's in the chat?
Some guy named Matthew Coca.
Oh. What's up? If schools can let's see. I'll go ahead and pull this up. So, if schools can schedule games against each other during the regular season, why can't they just schedule each other for a bowl game? I don't know. Arizona State can play West Virginia.
Yeah,
it'll be great. play it in Jerry World and call it some kind of ineligible bowl. Ineligible. There you go. News from the end of last week. The Big Ten said on Friday it will make availability reports mandatory on game days during the 2023 season. Right now, though this might be changing, they're the only conference to have those mandatory availability reports. We've also seen LSU's Brian Kelly has discussed the way that they are standardizing their injury reports. The top line is this is a response to gambling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Limit the amount of hiding or the motivation to try and deal with the nefarious markets. And I'm not turning to you first because I said nefarious markets, but Bud, do you think that this will actually create some sort of closer to standardized approach? Because there are few circles of the college football gossip sphere that are more electric than wondering about injuries and availability as it pertains to gambling.
Chip, you said this comes out on Saturday?
Yeah.
No, the news came out on Friday.
No, but the reports have to come out 2 hours before kick.
Yeah.
Oh, then
no impact.
No, I think it's a huge dog and pony show. If you run a big betting syndicate, you're still greasing a trainer or a student manager, and you're going to know well before. It's a dog and pony show to instill more public confidence in the game. That at least like, hey, we weren't trying to hide this injury before kickoff. And I mean, anything the Big Ten can do right now from a PR and image management standpoint, given the Iowa situation. That makes sense. But no, honestly, I think it has zero impact on the market.
I will say, though, if you're like Kirk Ferentz and you've got an 11 a.m. kick that day, and at 9 a.m. a bunch of your players are suddenly checking their phones a lot, you might want to nip that in the bud because they might be getting in some last-minute bets. I don't think this really impacts anything. I do think this is, more than anything, this is a move to get in bed with the sports books as another revenue source in the long run by having the kind of standardized, well, we've set out the injury reports to help the casual bettor on Saturday who is putting in his bets. Yeah. And I think that's very much in line with what the Big Ten is kind of heading towards, because there was a video, Illinois football's Twitter account shared it last week. Tony Petitti was doing the, campus tour that he's doing before the season starts, his first year in charge. And he's talking to Illinois football players, and he's like, talking about how excited he is for the season and how excited they should be because they're going to be on CBS and Fox and NBC. So his talk to the players was about how they're going to be on 3 different channels this year, which gives you a glimpse into how the leadership of conferences works now. That's what's important to the players. We're going to be on 3 different networks all day long.
Do you think we get to a place where it's like the NFL, where we get,
yes.
Yes. 100%. The worst thing for sportsbooks last year was the Cam Rising situation, right?
What about this year too?
Well, this is different though. I mean, like there was no even clue that he might be out for that game, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a sportsbook, you don't want people at home thinking the games are rigged, scripted. Like you want people, most people are going to lose regardless. But you want people to have some confidence when they wager, and that you don't want them thinking, oh my gosh, I just got screwed by this coach. And I'm not saying Whittingham did. Like there's a real chance that they didn't actually know up until warmups just how much Rising could tolerate. But regardless of what they did or did not know, at least putting out something that says like, hey, pretty questionable. Hey, like seriously, a game time decision there would instill more confidence in your casual bettor, I think.
And to give a little context here, but that's a great callback. Last season, Cam Rising, leads Utah to a win against USC, 43-42, huge game in the middle of October. The following week, Utah is off, limited media availability as they're in their off week. They were back in action on a Thursday night against Washington State on the road. And the broadcast had no clue. And they were even mentioning on the broadcast.
They kept Petros in the dark.
Yeah, we found out later that they had, huge graphics packages, and they had planned out their broadcast with the idea that we're going to be talking about Cam Rising, who just led Utah to this epic win against USC, and he's not even in the game. And that kind of scenario was a little bit of a lightning rod for criticism for Utah, Kyle Whittingham, sort of the Pac-12 in general, for the way that was handled. So I think that we are avoiding that for sure as we work our way towards something like LSU is doing, where it's going to be some standardized injury reports.
Coaches hate this.
Oh yeah.
They hate having to give anybody any information, even if it's only 2
hours.
But
if they all have to give it,
Whittingham, they all have to do it. I think they still don't like it, but they can deal with it.
You know these people. You know how paranoid they are about every single little thing that they do in prep and looking for any advantage. They hate that even if it's only 2 hours before kick, they have to tell you that their second string strong safety isn't in the lineup today.
Oh, and Whittingham famously will not tell anybody.
Correct.
Until the ball is kicked. You will not find out. The only reason I said push to this year, they put out their depth chart and they have Cam Rising QB1.
Yeah, but he's been to Whittingham's credit, I really don't think that he purposefully misleads when he answers the questions. Like I watch his press conferences and he does not give much, but he generally does not, at least as far as I've watched him, I don't think that Whittingham outright lies. Like he's not like, hey, he's fine on a Friday and then the kid just doesn't play at all, doesn't dress on a Saturday.
Lies of omission instead of lies of commission.
No doubt about that. But like, I don't think that Whittingham's out there like just outright saying like this kid's fine and then he's not fine. So, but he's openly discussed. I think he said, look, we want Rising to be back in practice like somewhere between 10 to 14 days. But he didn't say like he has to practice 10 to 14 days before. It's still Cam Rising. Like, would you rather have Cam Rising? I guess we'll get into the breakdown.
Yeah, we will.
A little bit. Yeah.
Coming up on the other side, there was still some action that was going on as we were wrapping up, including the conclusion of Vanderbilt. Going back and doing my quick check, the last score we gave you was 28-14. Vanderbilt ahead by 2 touchdowns. Got sweatier than that. Get your hard hat on. So we're going to talk a little post-game win expectancy and upon further review, all that and a look ahead to Thursday. Next.
Driving into the stadium, seeing everybody tailgating, I get that ready-to-go feeling.
You know, to walk through the fan section over there and see that many people excited about football, so I'm really looking forward to it.
You get away from football for a little bit and then you start missing and you get that itch again.
For me, that first catch is everything. Once I get one catch, I'm in the zone.
Getting back to football.
It's been too long.
We can't wait.
Can't wait.
We can't wait.
We can't wait.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Normally we would have more of a full-blown upon further review, but that's when we have 54 games between FBS teams, not 7 between FBS teams. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't some late night action. Of course, the Vanderbilt game delayed and more notes that we have gotten as we've continued to comb over what was. And Bud, you reference post-game win expectancy on here a lot. An advanced statistic that takes, you want to fill me in? I'm guessing like yards per play margin, field position, like a couple of those things into consideration in terms of who would win the game if everything was isolated on a down by down basis. Am I far off there? I feel like we can give a little.
No, you're not. It's a formula that is just more predictive than the final score. Right. It kind of like really like who played better on a down to down, trying to strip out some of the variance. Sometimes it evens out. Sometimes it doesn't. Over the large sample that is the entire season, certainly it evens out for the whole sport. But like some teams can run way better. Yeah, a couple that were interesting to me. So Jack State has a 25% success rate for the game, which is just ungodly bad. UTEP has a 60% post-game win expectancy and pulls that out. Execution, once you cross the 40-yard line, converting drives into points certainly matters. And UTEP had a whole lot of drives past the 40, which are generally defined as scoring opportunities, whether that's, Connolly or CFB data or game on paper or whatever the stat source that you guys like. That's kind of how they define it.
And didn't Danny, y'all came into the post game of that show as you were on CBS Sports Network. It was like, all right, congrats to Jacksonville State. But
I mean, you had 3rd and 1 going in just on the, right outside of field goal range. You've been running the ball pretty well. Your offensive line isn't bad. And you throw it not once, but twice. And the first one's like a fade route. I don't know. It was pretty bad end of game management. It was funny because the Inside College Football preview we did before, our producer was like, he wanted us to pump up Dana Dimmel as this big year for UTEP and how they've kind of got things going in the right direction. More wins the last 2 years and he just wanted us to paint him in this positive light. And I'm like, I thought we had a discussion on here one time, but he could be on the hot seat. I'm like, man. And watching that unfold, I was like, holy cow, he's going to get a lot of heat this week and deservedly so.
Is there like I know we have EPA for like fourth down decisions. Do we have an EPA yet for like timeout decisions? This is for Bud, obviously. I don't think that Chip or Danny are going to know the answer to this one.
I don't think it's public. SSA, which is Sports Source Analytics, they almost certainly have one that like that. I think they have a card, right, and that they use in game because you can't use an iPad, of course, because we're stuck in the 80s, and then obviously I know all teams, pretty sure like almost all the teams subscribe to those dudes. Maybe StatsBomb as well have this, but they get a post-game report of, hey, like this is what you did. This is like suboptimal. This is like tremendously suboptimal. Like you're really not doing a very good job here. Generally taking a delay of game after taking a timeout. I always call this a Jeff Bowden because he was famous for taking timeouts after TV timeouts, including, I believe he did it twice in the game in the Swamp where FSU actually won the PK Sam throw, but just a necessary, just, buffoonery. I call that the Jeff Bowdening when you go timeout after TV timeout, but those would probably rate pretty low on that scale.
Yeah, because every fan base thinks their coach is terrible with timeouts. I really think we need to go public with this stat so that way we can just definitively prove, actually, your coach is good. This guy, he's terrible.
There are definitely some coaches who are better at it,
yes,
than not. You should be using your timeouts on defense. You have full control over what you're going to call if you're prepped, if you have good communication up in the box, right? Hey, if we come up short, we're calling this. Let's go. If we don't, we're calling this. Now, if somebody gets hurt, I understand. But like some of these teams that routinely use their timeouts on offense as opposed to defense, they are messing up. Offense has control. Timeouts as a weapon should be used defensively to stop the clock in order to get that last possession.
I like that. Good take. All right. What were some of the other win expectancy situations that stood out?
So FIU was La Tech was 99 and had to sweat that. I thought a really bad job of game management by Sonny Cumbie down the stretch, basically playing for like a 46-yard field goal. Really? We're trusting the college kicker that much there. UMass was 76%, which surprised me. I thought New Mexico State would have been higher given like the down-to-down basis. UMass was still pretty terrible on offense, but then they had the two big interception returns as well. But I guess they dominated in some other areas. I think Hawaii was like 82%, which kind of surprised me. But the kickoff, look, there is some skill to being good on kickoffs. It's very not repeatable for the most part. So the fact that Vandy had the 100-yard kickoff, the system's going to say, hey, if they do this again, it's not repeatable. I do think that Vandy could have driven on Hawaii again and again if they really needed to, I think. And I think they'll get some of this O-line stuff fixed. I watched this morning. I don't think they were getting their butts whipped at the line of scrimmage. I think they miscommunicated some stuff. I do have some hope that they can get it fixed. And they held a lot of guys on defense too. 2 years ago, Vandy can't hold anybody on defense and hope to win a game. Like, you tell me Vandy held 3 or 4 important dudes and they still won. I'm okay with that.
Like they didn't play?
Yeah, because they were dinged.
Still
little close for comfort.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that like you're in this matchup, and we don't need to dive deep on it. I'm glad you're able to give a little rewatch because the top line for me was that offensive line and the inability to give AJ Swan some time to let those wide receivers cook. But if on a down-to-down basis, Hawaii outplayed, like Hawaii feels like it won this game. How about have y'all seen the Hawaii-Stanford line, the way that it's moved? So
yeah, Stanford was a favorite, right? And now
are they really? I saw Stanford.
No, they're not dogs, are they?
No. It was Stanford 8.5, and now it's Stanford 4.5.
Yeah.
So everybody saw Hawaii against Vanderbilt. And
Tom, you nervous?
No, I'll probably buy back on Stanford if it's moved that much. Give me the Cardinal.
Yeah,
Lock it up.
Saw 4.5 yesterday, and that seemed like I was going through and looking at all of the reactions for teams that played in week 0 to see what the line movement was for week 1, and Hawaii is the most dramatic, where probably casuals and professionals who would take something like win expectancy would look at that and say, all right, I think we need to change our power rating on this Hawaii team. It does seem like, the improvement that they had throughout last season has carried over so that they are a much better team than they were at the start of last year.
I'll also say win expectancy does not have access to the GPS numbers. 21.7 miles per hour.
21.7 miles per hour. That's SEC speed. We told y'all that it was going to be there.
Can't even drive on my street that fast without getting a ticket.
Word?
Oh, there is a that we got one of those mile per hour things underneath the speed limit. So I've been checking my golf cart, seeing like if I can get over 22. My buddy got one. That's got Danny. You got a golf cart, right?
No, we did.
You got the lithium battery?
We're in the market for one.
Dude, the lithium, the lithium with the chip.
Is this retirement home central over here? What are we talking about? Getting our golf cart?
Shout out to my buddy DeHaze. Man, they got their like the big lift and they go super fast. And I think we're probably losing audience here, but I'm like, I can't get a 6-inch lift on my golf cart because like my boys, I know we'll want to drive it, in a couple of years, and they're going to roll that thing. So
yeah, that's what non-lift teenage daughters, same deal.
Yeah.
The Seminole retirement community.
You can go 31 in the lithium
bingo parlors.
So listen, you do not want to, with the combination of having two boys, both put a lift and supercharge the engine.
Right. Exactly.
That's a horrible combination.
I'm just going right there at like 21 mile an hour. Like people are passing me doing like 31. I'm like, chip away. That's fine. Just go ahead.
Coming up on the other side, we're going to go ahead and get you that early taste of Thursday's Week 1 action. Big game breakdown for Florida and Utah. Thoughts on Minnesota-Nebraska and more next.
It's time. The best Transformers yet. There you go. Is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
This is going to be fun, man. Now let's talk to your manifestation.
Transformers Rise of the Beast, rated PG-13, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Shout out to Coop watching live, who just says get a roll cage. All right, now that's it for the supercharged golf cart talk for today. Meet us back here Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, where we will be drafting our favorite Week 1 games and shopping for golf carts live on YouTube. All right. Florida and Utah. It is the biggest game of Thursday night, the momentous kickoff of Week 1. We are in a situation where, as we hinted at earlier, we are unaware at this moment of Cam Rising's status. The line certainly suggests, and the line movement suggests, that there is some doubt as to whether or not he will play. Let us take both considerations, both your assumption for what Utah is going to be this year with Cam Rising in the lineup, but then also the adjustments that might happen. What in the world Florida might look like with Graham Mertz as he takes over the QB1 duties for the Gators, the home field advantage for Utah. Lots to get to here. Tom, what is a matchup to watch or a storyline? Like, what's the angle to this Florida-Utah game that is standing out the most to you?
The Cam Rising one is obviously very important, his health, Graham Mertz's debut. But for me, as far as the matchup is concerned, one of the things I'm mostly interested in is how well will Florida run the football against Utah? Because last year, Florida had Anthony Richardson. And having a player like that kind of skews your offensive rushing output. And in a way, it's supposed to help you be able to run the ball easier. And Florida did run the ball. They weren't terrible at it, but if you look, they were 7th in yards per carry. They were 17th in explosive rate. That's Anthony Richardson, because they were 71st in success rate at 41.4%. So down to down, they struggled. And I think that really impacted their offense overall because they had a hard time getting in good positions on 2nd and 3rd downs, and it left too much in Anthony Richardson to make something magic happen. And you look at this Utah defense, which traditionally you think has been very good against the run, but it wasn't last year. Like, it was okay, but it was mostly just slightly above average. It wasn't great. So now that you lose Anthony Richardson and the advantage that should give to your run game, and you're replacing him with Graham Mertz, who offers very little, if any, actual threat with his legs, there's going to be a lot on this Florida offensive line to open some holes. The Florida running backs are going to have to probably, figure out ways to get yards after contact and make guys miss. If you're going to go on the road and beat Utah in that environment, they are going to have to be able to move the ball on the ground. So for me, that is the one thing I'm really interested in seeing from Florida's offense and Utah's defense, because I want to see if they can do a better job of plugging runs than they did last year, because they gave up some big ones.
All right, Bud's got a battle with
Bud in the mute button.
Bud loses to the mute button one more time.
You snooze, you lose. I'll flip it on the other side. I'll say Utah and their necessity to be able to run the football, because Tavian Thomas had a really nice game last year, and they had a lot of quarterback run yards with Cam Rising. He had 91 yards rushing himself at the quarterback position, but I don't know if you can trust that again this year with him where he is. Do they try to make him throw from the pocket a little bit more? I would definitely be prepping for some wildcat, because I think, their backup also was hurt. Like, I think you got to be ready for like a physical, kind of slugfest, ugly game from both of these teams if Cam Rising can't go and if there's backup issues. So I think Florida's front seven defensively and their ability to stop the run, and hopefully, I think that's what kind of scares you against any rushing quarterback, but a rushing quarterback who's a good but not elite passer is try to keep him in the pocket. Try to make Cam Rising, or whoever the quarterback is, beat you from the pocket. You just cannot let him get those hidden yards and beat you down the field. And, last year when the crunch time came there, Cam Rising did have the big interception. I think you got to try to force him to pick you apart from the pocket.
Yeah, I think Florida, for them, it's going to be, can you avoid the critical mistakes that can come on the road, right? Florida's center has not been practicing, and he's an all-SEC type guy. Now, the backup, I think, is probably fine. I actually saw him as a recruit, so I don't think you downgrade him that much. But Florida's best playmakers at receiver, Pearsall, who's a vet, he's slot, and then some true freshmen who have some real juice. But also, it's true freshmen on the road. Like, are they going to make the right side adjustments on their routes, right? Like, it's not like Utah just runs one thing on defense. They're fairly complex. So I want to see how Florida's new pieces handle the adversity. Physically, I think UF definitely has the size. I'm kind of curious how UF is on the edge. I think they're probably really good at defensive tackle. And obviously on the one side, they're good, but Justice Boone, remember, is out for the year. Powell Ryland transferred to Vatek. So I am kind of curious about the edge pass rush for the Gators. Austin Armstrong, their new DC, basically led the country in a lot of the blitz rate stats when he was at Southern Miss last year. So Florida is absolutely going to try to light up Utah. Can Utah catch them in some sort of like blitzes with screens? If Rising doesn't go, at least Utah has known about it for a month, right? And so they've been able to plan with their other quarterbacks, and maybe they'll rotate them in. It's probably a heavy run game from both sides. I mean, Florida's been kind of chirping about how good Mertz has looked, and I'm willing to maybe believe it, but I'm willing to believe it after I see it. I'm not willing to buy in quite yet. But if he plays really well against a good Utah defense, then maybe that team has more upside than we thought it did. And I think we all took them on their over anyway, or most of us did for this year. So the Rising piece is huge, but can Florida's young offense limit mistakes? And then how does Utah handle the blitz? Because I do think Florida comes after them early and often.
I feel bad. Go ahead.
The Mertz thing is fascinating because you see Wisconsin fans getting chippy, like, whoa, wait a second. We've heard about this great version of Graham Mertz before. Let's see it. I mean, they're more skeptical too. I still think he's going to play a little bit better, but I mean, to be thrown in a hostile atmosphere on the road is something he's got to prove. I don't think he'll light up the SEC. I just don't think he's going to be as bad, and he might be a little bit more conservative and just play to kind of not make that big mistake. I think that might be what Billy Napier wants him to do early on.
What's the Bo Nix, like the old meme with Bo Nix? He's looking like a Heisman contender this year. That, except it's Graham Mertz and preseason training camp reports.
Yeah, he's been looking really good. The offense is taking a step forward. He really could be a Heisman Trophy contender this year. Yeah, and they put that on the 2-building billboard of Bo Nix that they've got all over the place. I feel bad that I am putting Florida storylines all the way down to like fourth most interesting. Florida is a bit player in me looking at this game as a way to look at Utah, because Florida is talented enough and has a physicality and size, weight, height, height, weight, speed, size, all those things. Where it's going to be a real test of how good Utah is in a loaded Pac-12. I love this game because of the way that it's going to expose potentially wide receivers for Utah. Who jumps off the page as like, that guy is a real difference maker. We love Keithy. We love it, but this is a big like running backs, tight ends. It feels like they're really good around the ball. And then as you get further away from it and closer to the perimeter, I've got some questions. And you've got real like SEC defensive backs out there. If you get locked up, things could get really tough defensively. Florida might have offensive line issues, but man, like as we discussed, Utah's defense, and Bud, you helped reveal this, those communication issues as they were trying to figure out exactly how to make all the different pieces of that defense, which is complex, fit together. They gave up a lot of explosive plays last year, and Florida has the athleticism, a couple great running backs and skill players who could really make you pay if you are making those same kind of mistakes. So as we look at Utah as one of those big four teams right at the top of the Pac-12, Florida's role in my eyes is more as like a good litmus test for whether or not this Utah team can be a championship contender. My takeaways are probably going to be much stronger about Utah one way or another because of the level of competition they're playing here.
Mikey Matthews, I know we gave you a lot of freshman names and a couple of them hit, including obviously Zach Branch over the weekend. Mikey Matthews, kid out of Mission Viejo, is definitely a guy to watch in this matchup. Came in, has had a really good camp from what I've been reading at Utah's 24/7 site, and Steve Bartle and those guys do a great job over there. But Matthews is definitely a name to watch. They also took Micah Pittman from Florida State, who's a very dependable player. So they're going to be challenged to basically handle blitz, and that's a challenge for your protection schemes. It's also a challenge for your receivers. You have to break off your routes at the right time, and we'll see how coordinated if it is the backup quarterback.
That's to me the big storyline. Is, I mean, obviously everyone's watching that, but if you have Cam Rising, you would expect him to be able to handle the blitz, know where to go with the football quickly, and his elusivity, like he can get away from it. Backup, man, and that's one thing. If you're backup, the coach should always tell you, every coordinator, quarterback coach, if you got to be ready for all the blitz package, because that's going to be the tendency. As soon as they see a backup, they're sending it and seeing if you can handle it. And it gives you a lot of opportunity for some big plays, but if you're not ready for it, you're going to see it all night long.
Yeah. Also in the backfield, shout out to former Texas quarterback Jaquindon Jackson. He moved to running back, and he provides another option there. And talk about I mean that's just right there, right? And short red zone situation. Mm-hmm. Jaquindon Jackson could be able to go out there and give you the kind of playmaking that you might get. Okay, we're going to be obviously picking this on Thursday, right at the front of the Locks episode. Is there anything that could happen between now and then that would change your lean on this game? I don't want to force anybody to make picks here on a Monday, but we're looking at, it's down to 6.5. I think right now as a little bit of a consensus line. So do you think it's fair? What's your expectation for how the game's going to play out?
Yeah, I think it's fair. This game opened 10. Rising is not like worth a full touchdown on the number. He's probably more of like a 6-point guy. It's already moved 4 points. So I think the market is showing, and it's moved across the 7, which is obviously like fully across the 7, which is a key number. I think the market certainly thinks that Rising is not going, but they think it. They don't know it. And if he doesn't go, I don't think it would get all the way to 3. You're probably going to look at something sitting 3.5, 4. The 4 to 6 is basically a dead zone in college football. Not that it's not worth anything, but it's certainly not a number people are trying to middle typically. So I think the market is telling us that Rising is most likely not going to play, but it's a most likely thing. I don't think that the market knows for sure, because if they did know, I think this thing would just go to 4.
So we need those injury reports.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't get them till Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now on Thursday's show, I'm not going to be locking anything up in this game, because unless we know everything that's going on, I'm not going to do it. But more than anything, and the totals dropped already too with all the Rising stuff, but I would be on the under before I'm on anything in this right now. Because I don't know. Like, I have questions about Florida's offense going into that environment with Graham Mertz. I have questions about Utah's offense if Cam Rising isn't healthy or isn't playing. It's just, to me, this seems like it's a big name kind of Thursday night game. But for me, it strikes me as it could be kind of a rock fight.
Hey, listen, rock fights. And I learned, not that it was a new lesson, but week 0 really showed you that sometimes it's not about winning it. Sometimes it's about losing it less than the other team on the field. And we could have another situation like that, especially if we've got a backup quarterback. Danny, you got any thoughts before we move on to Minnesota-Nebraska?
I kind of like Florida in this one, but without the and that was going in under the assumption, who the heck's playing quarterback for Utah. I mean, if I knew Cam Rising was starting, I would back off that somewhat. I just think it's an opportunity for the Gators kind of I think physically on the defensive front, I think if Utah's more one-dimensional, I think they can shut them down.
But if Florida wins, does it change your expectations for where Florida sits in the big picture in the SEC?
No.
And if Utah loses, it changes where you think Utah sits in the Pac-12.
Yeah, you're making your point, counselor. That was very well done.
Florida's also running Spencer Fano, true freshman at left tackle. They announced it. This kid's a stud.
So that's a good thing. That's not like an alarm bell's going off necessarily.
Well, I think the athleticism is off the charts. Apparently, he's put on a bunch of good weight since he got there. He was one of these like super athletic guys who needed to add a little bit of weight. But I think the fact that they trust him, I don't think they were super hard up at left tackle from my recollection. So it probably means he beat out somebody who's at least okay, which is encouraging to actually run him out there in game 1.
Should be very fun. All right, Big Ten conference opener, Nebraska at Minnesota. That game's going to kick off at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it on Fox. Minnesota breaking in the Greek Rifle as their new quarterback, but we do have some experience at the skill positions, even though we lose a household name like Mo Ibrahim. Nebraska, a whole bunch of new, not just Matt Rule on the sideline, Jeff Sims at the quarterback position, a couple other key transfers are going to be making up the Cornhuskers' effort to win one-score games, or hopefully win them by more than one score after what has been a devastating trend for Nebraska from the Scott Frost era. Tom, what are the big storylines and matchups we should have our eyes on with this one?
The Greek Rifle is a big deal, I think, because, Tanner Morgan was Tanner Morgan, but Kaliakmanis is somebody, and we've talked about it on this show. I know that coaching staff is high on him long-term. I am not high on him in the short term, so I have some serious questions about that Minnesota offense and how explosive or two-dimensional it can be. I still think we're going to see a team that's, running the ball more often than anything short of a service academy with him back there. Nebraska defensively, it's hard to say what to expect from the Cornhuskers because new coaching staff, a very different looking roster, a lot of new players in key spots. How much of it last year was culture? How much of it was talent and roster? We're going to get our first actual glimpse into what has changed with the Cornhuskers this year. I don't have any real solid feel for what to expect in that game, other than I do think Minnesota wins. And kind of like Florida-Utah, I do think it's going to be pretty low scoring.
Yes.
I think it could be. So Matt Rule has a history of basically just punting year 1. Not seeming to care. He did address this in the press conference, not seeming not to care, but prioritizing establishing his culture over winning in year 1. But I do think it's a little bit different. I think they're certainly going to try.
This scenario.
This is completely different situation.
So different than Baylor or even Temple.
So, when it comes to this game, does Minnesota have casinos? I know they have bars, but do they have casinos? Because if they don't have casinos, you already have a leg up on what you had last year, right? In Ireland, let's reduce the distractions. Let's make sure bed check for players and coaches is achieved and hit those bed check goals. So, I think Nebraska, may have a chance here. Coaches in the ACC thought Jeff Sims was pretty good, better than his numbers suggested. Rule has a real history of running the quarterbacks. They can probably piece together enough. But I'm interested in Minnesota, man. Ryan Burns told us that Kaliakmanis has some real juice to him, and maybe that's more of a 24 thing. But what if he arrives a year early? I don't know. Like, I think he's definitely has a lot better talent than Tanner Morgan did. And Minnesota went out and they upgraded a little bit in the transfer portal at receiver. They got the Crooms kid from Western. They got Elijah Spencer from
Charlotte.
Charlotte, excuse me. Yeah, like they may have some juice to them. I don't think this is going to shoot out, but Minnesota's defense is definitely not as good as it was last year, given what they lost. Nebraska's defense is probably not any good at all.
Well, I mean, we're supposed to have Spanford and Altman Bell both healthy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when's the last time that we've had both of those players available, active, ready to go, rolling at the same time? I mean, we're not going to flash all the way back to a Rashad Bateman, Tyler Johnson kind of situation, but if Kaliakmanis is there and is ready to go, isn't he kind of just like almost a throwback? I mean, he's not a mobile guy. He's 6'4", 220.
He can
win from the pocket a little bit, but I think he can run some.
Yeah,
he's got them real long legs. He's a long strider.
It's more of a gallop as he's able to go and get you what you're going to be able to get. Danny, what are you looking at here?
I'm excited to see Jeff Sims with the opportunity he's got here playing. What does he have better talent in Nebraska than he did at Georgia Tech when he was there? He probably a little bit of an upgrade, I think
this year
yeah. So I'm always excited because felt like he was one of those young quarterbacks. I mean, remember his freshman year he beat Florida State. It was kind of like, oh, this kid's gonna be a star. And then he got some bad habits trying to win too many games because you're playing from behind. But he's pretty athletic. He's got really good, a really good skill set. This will be interesting too, because I wonder, if Nebraska wins this game, oh my goodness, like the Matt Rule, Nebraska's back is going to be off the charts. And then for BJ Fleck in Minnesota, some of the offseason stuff with the culture, does that crop up again? Does he start taking more criticism? So, and if Minnesota wins, it's like, oh yeah, you were supposed to. Nebraska's in a rebuild year. So I think it's be an interesting game. I kind of don't know what to expect from Nebraska. And I think I know what I'll get from Minnesota. I just wonder if Nebraska can have some success stopping them.
Yeah, the one thing that really I think is the deciding factor here is, but I know you mentioned that you think there'll be a drop-off, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is a slight drop-off, but I do think of the 4 units, not including special teams, the one I am most confident in going into this matchup is the Minnesota defense, just because I think Joe Rossi has done a very good job on that side of the ball. So that to me gives the Gophers the edge in this game, because I still don't know what we're going to get from the Nebraska defense. I don't know how explosive the Nebraska offense is going to be, and I've gone over all my concerns about the Minnesota offense. So I think if nothing else, that keeps Minnesota in the game. It probably proves to be the deciding factor.
I mean, Minnesota last year was like a top 6 or 7 opponent adjusted defense. Like that, they could drop to like 15th or 20th in terms of like adjusting for opponent defense and still be by far the best unit on the field. But what they did last year was pretty special and kind of went under the radar. So
Illinois' defense kind of overshadowed them last year.
Right,
they
exactly.
were really good too.
Of course.
I love the deadpan.
No, I'm being dead serious. Illinois' defense got so much attention because it came out of nowhere that people weren't really paying attention that Minnesota's defense was really good too.
Yeah.
Also on Thursday, go ahead.
Can we just real quick, because I saw a couple of people put it in there about Arik Gilbert. I feel like kind of the same way because they're excited about him playing tight end for Nebraska. I feel like the same conversation needs to be had that I have with Georgia fans who are excited about him. Like, is there a more unreliable player in the country considering, historically? And I hope he's got things figured out, and I hope he plays and meets his potential. But my goodness, has he been a player that's had massive expectations everywhere he's been and has not even played much, as of late.
Did he get a waiver?
Well, that's what I was wondering too. I was going to ask you, because
yeah.
I know that was like a last minute. They were waiting to hear on it, weren't they?
I haven't seen anything on his waiver. I think as a former 5-star, if he got it, I think we would
the other
see
day.
it.
Still awaits 3 days ago. That was the headline I saw. Still waiting on eligibility.
It's a lot of transfers already.
North Carolina wide receiver Tez Walker also still awaiting his ruling from the NCAA on that appeal process, according to rumors from around. He's still running with the ones though, so coach and staff still trying to get him ready for South Carolina. Okay, also on Thursday, Wake Forest will be in action against Elon. UCF opens up against Kent State. Up in Spencer Pratt and Whitney Port Stadium in East Hartford, Connecticut, we'll have NC State taking on UConn. Missouri in action against South Dakota. We've got the Trent Dilfer era starting at UAB with North Carolina A&T in town and Arizona State, as we mentioned earlier, in the nightcap. Danny, we going to be in studio?
In studio, NC State, UConn. Let's go.
Let's go.
Brennan Armstrong era kick off with a bang. It's a tricky game, though.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you?
UConn's been on the up and up. I'm assuming they're playing at the Rent, right? At Rensselaer.
Is that what Pratt and Whitney Stadium has been renamed, or we've got or is the Rent now been named Pratt and Whitney Stadium?
Probably.
You know they got a quarterback now at UConn?
Oh yeah.
No, like an actual quarterback. So I talked to him about this the other day. So they got Fangano from Maine, and he played for UConn's coordinator for 3 years at Maine. I remember last year they started I forgot the start. Was it Roberson from Penn State? And he got hurt like almost immediately, and they had to go to Zion Turner, who was definitely not ready. And they basically scratched and clawed their way, just figured out a way to coach their way to a bowl game. Their kids played hard. They played together. I am kind of interested to see what UConn can do here with a quarterback that they feel confident about. I mean, that was a team that would run like swing screens on 3rd and 8 because they had zero confidence, justifiably so, in the quarterback position. So I think UConn could be a little feisty.
NC State minus 14.5.
Okay.
Robert
with Notre Dame on deck, you got the look ahead spot, man.
NC State minus 14.5.
All right.
They to fall short in this spot would be incredibly disappointing for an NC State program who lost a lot of starters, but has a lot of experience. You think about all the injury issues that NC State has had over the last 2 years. The guys that are taking over that are not quote, like in the magazines, returning starters, they've all played a bunch of football. They'll be perfectly fine, ready to take over. Brennan Armstrong experience should be fun too against this UConn defense. Bud, Danny, what else? Or Bud, Tom, what else are we looking at Thursday night?
Tom, what do you got?
Nothing that we haven't discussed.
All right, Kent State
plus 36.5. Come on. You give me 5 whole touchdowns at kickoff.
Chip, you did not read my betting guide, did you?
They are called the Golden Flashes. All right.
Yeah, but nobody knows what this guy's going to run. He's never been a head coach. Like the coordinator was like at Arkansas State for a minute. Like, look, clearly Kent State is bad, but there's some kind of, how do you figure just how bad, right? Are they like, just a typical UMass bad? Are they what Nevada was last year in a rebuild? Or are they more like a team that you're like, oh God, this is worse than an FCS team? I don't really know. Like Sean Lewis and his staff did such a good job there that it kind of reset our expectations to what Kent State could be. But for the most of our lives, Kent State has been a fairly bad team. But if you're UCF, we are dealing with a hurricane bearing down on the state this week. So I don't know like what the field conditions are going to be like, what the attendance is going to be like for this ball game. And I don't know what Kent State's going to run. So there may be kind of a feeling out period as to figure out exactly what they're going to run because nobody seems to know. I couldn't find their spring game online, so they didn't show anything. Did they play a spring game? I couldn't find anything. It really is a huge mystery to me on this.
This should be 31. It's preposterous.
No, I'm not saying that. Maybe it should be 27. Maybe it should be 45. Like I don't know.
I need the Google numbers on how many people searched for Kent State spring game 2023. Because I'm telling you, there was only one.
It
was Bud.
It's geotagged the Orlando area.
Oh my gosh.
Wake post Sam Hartman era starts. Mitch Griffith's taking over. It's Elon. They're going to be able to, pretty much push him around. At least that is my expectation. If anything otherwise would be concerning. I don't have much for the FCS opponents. Those games that Missouri's going to be playing, Arizona State's going to be playing. Outside of the 2 games that we discussed, consider me all in on NC State UConn, and that being a good listen. If you're going to make an argument that NC State is a top 5 team in the ACC, I'll hear it. But we want to see that Robert and I, Brennan Armstrong offense get out and cook a little bit because they should, given the matchup here in this spot. Anything else?
We're not doing Friday stuff, right? That's for Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have Wednesday. We're drafting games. Ooh, buddy. It's the week 1 game draft. Consider it a viewer's guide of sorts. We're going to be picking one game from each of the 3 major windows, whether it's noon Eastern time, 3:30, and then in prime time. We've got a wild card spot if you want to use that for after dark, if you want to double up on noon, 3:30, or the prime time. It is your way to know how to plan out your day. It is the week 1 game draft. So come hang out with us live Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Subscribe to the channel. The chase for 50K begins now.
Let's go. Subscribe.